Whisper of the Tides. Chapter 4. The Enchanted Revealed. The Wanderer stepped forward into the golden passage, heart thumping steadily with anticipation. The warm light embraced him immediately, as gentle and natural as the glow of early sunrise. He found himself in a small circular chamber beyond the narrow tunnel, a hidden sanctuary at the very core of the cave. The air here was warmer, and it carried the light scent of sea breeze mixed with something like fresh rain. For a moment, he thought he was alone. The golden radiance seemed to come from all around, emanating from the damp walls and the shallow pool of clear water that almost entirely floored the chamber. The pool rippled softly as he waded a step into it, reflecting the glow in shimmering patterns across the ceiling. It was as if the rock itself held an inner dawn. Then he noticed a movement in those ripples, distinct from his own. In the center of the pool, where the light shone brightest, the water began to rise, swirling gently upward in a spiral. The Wanderer stood perfectly still, lantern in one hand, the other subconsciously touching the comforting shape of the conch shell in his pocket. Before his eyes, the column of water and light coalesced and took form. It was a luminous figure, about the size of a person, shaped from swirling sea water and suffused with golden light. Within the translucent shape, one could just make out the suggestion of human features: arms, a flowing gown-like outline, hair that drifted like tendrils of seaweed, but everything was fluid and shimmering, as though not fully of this world. He sensed a gentle feminine presence, stood on the surface of the pool without disturbing it, facing the Wanderer with a kindly posture. The Spirit of the Tides had appeared. Though the Wanderer had braced himself for something extraordinary, he still felt a wave of awe and a touch of reverence course through him. He instinctively lowered the hand holding the lantern, almost in a bow. The cavern's light was plenty. His lantern's glow seemed pale in comparison, so he quietly set it on a dry bit of stone by the water's edge. For a long, serene moment, there was only the sound of the water gently lapping where the spirit stood, and the soft hum that the Wanderer had heard before, now clearly emanating from her form. It wasn't a song with notes, but it felt like music all the same, calming, ancient, and full of meaning one could almost understand if they just listened with the heart. "Welcome, traveler," came a soft voice, breaking the silence without shattering it. It was as gentle as a lullaby and echoed slightly in the domed chamber. The Wanderer realized the spirit's lips hadn't moved. Her form was more suggestion than solid, but the voice was distinctly feminine and seemed to resonate from all around him, or perhaps from within his own mind. He found his voice, quiet and respectful. "Thank you," he managed, barely above a whisper. He had 100 questions in him, but none wanted to push forward rudely. Instead, what came out simply was, "I have followed your whisper." The spirit's form glided closer across the water, leaving a trail of light ripples that fanned out and made the reflections dance. Though her features were not sharply defined, he had the impression of kind eyes gazing at him, eyes that held the blue of deep ocean depths and the gold of sunrise intertwined. "You have," the spirit answered warmly, "and bravely and faithfully so." There was a smile in her voice. "Few make it to this place. Fewer still arrive with a heart as open as yours." The Wanderer felt a pleasant warmth in his chest at her words, like a child being praised by a beloved teacher. I almost can't believe all that's happened, he said softly. Yet at the same time, it feels like I was meant to be here, like I was called. The spirit of the tides drifted slightly to the side, circling him slowly as she spoke. You were, in a sense, as were those before you. We of the tides have watched over countless souls, sending out gentle invitations to those who need them most. Not all here. Many hearts are too burdened by the noise of the world. But you listened. He remembered the first night on his own world shore, hearing the whisper in the waves that no one else seemed to notice. I almost ignored it, he admitted, his voice echoing softly. Had I been a little more tired or a little less lonely, I might have gone to bed instead of listening. But I was lonely, and the whisper made me feel not so alone. At that, the spirit halted in front of him. She reached out an indistinct hand-like ripple of light. Without fear, the wanderer extended his own hand in return, palm upward. It felt only natural. When the spirit's watery light touched his skin, he sensed a soothing coolness and a vibration like a quiet harp string being plucked. Though it looked like water, his hand came away dry, yet tingling with warmth all the same. You were never truly alone, the spirit said kindly. Her voice held a slight echo of others within it, as if many voices spoke in unison at a gentle volume. None of you ever are. Not you, nor any creature that lives under sky and stars. The ocean knows this, for it touches every shore and every life in some way. He listened, the truth of her words resonating with what the letters in the chest had already begun to teach him. He thought of the letter he read, of the comfort it gave. I met one of the others, through the letter left behind, he said. Their words made me feel connected across the years. I felt their sorrow and their hope as if it were my own. The spirit's form glowed a bit brighter at that. Yes, those who came here become part of the ocean story. Their feelings, their learnings, all are cherished and remembered by the tides. That letter found its way to you because you needed to hear their voice, just as you needed to hear mine. The wanderer nodded slowly. Did you guide me to that particular island, to the lighthouse and the kind keeper? Everything fell into place so perfectly. It's like the whole night was arranged for me. He wasn't accusing. His tone was more of wonderment. He realized how special the chain of events was. The boat waiting, the keeper expecting him, the lagoon, the letters, now this. The spirit's laughter was a soft, melodic ripple, like a tiny wavelet over pebbles. The sea works in its own subtle ways. We did nudge a few things, yes. The boat belonged to a fisherman long ago, who had a dream that he should leave it for a traveller fated to come. He never questioned it. The keeper, Josiah, is attuned to the ocean more than most. He's a friend of ours. He kept the path ready and the lantern lit. In truth, he's one of us in heart, though he remains human. Every so often the sea chooses a guardian on land, a lighthouse keeper, a storyteller, to help guide those who listen, so you were well protected on your journey. Hearing that warmed the wanderer's soul. It made perfect sense. Josiah's uncanny readiness, his gentle wisdom, of course the sea loved him too. He said he felt it in his bones that someone would come. I suppose that was your doing too. A whisper to his heart, nothing more, the spirit confirmed. He's attuned enough that a whisper sufficed, where others might need a storm to wake them. There was gentle amusement in her tone. The wanderer felt a lightness build inside him, relief, gratitude. The world was kinder and more connected than he had dared hope when he first set foot on that beach, feeling quite alone. He realized his eyes had moistened again. "I have felt alone for so long," he confessed quietly, looking down at the glowing water around his ankles, traveling from place to place, never sure where I belonged. But here, I feel like I was remembered, as if the world had a place set aside for me after all, waiting until I was ready. The spirit drifted a little closer, her form brightening and then dimming with a slow pulse, like the rhythm of breath. This place was waiting for you, and not just you, through you. It was waiting to reach others whose names we don't even know yet. She lifted what might have been her hand and gently brushed it over the pocket where the conch shell rested, making the fabric glow for a moment. "You carry a piece of our voice with you in that shell. Through it, our story and yours are entwined." At this, the wanderer carefully drew out the conch shell once more. It glowed a soft blue in his palm, but as the spirit touched it, that glow merged with the golden light and blossomed into a warm, white radiance. The carved patterns on the shell gleamed, the same ocean script that adorned the cave walls. He held the shell to his heart. "When I found it, I heard someone, the sea, I suppose, telling me to follow. It led me all the way here." The spirit of the tides nodded. "That shell is special. Once in an age we send one ashore meant for a particular soul. It seems like chance, just another shell on the beach. But it carries a part of us, a whisper that only the intended person will find irresistible. Through it, we spoke to you." He recalled how the shell's whisper felt like an old friend calling him. "Thank you for that," he said sincerely, looking up at the spirit. "It gave me courage and company when I needed it most." "You are most welcome," she replied, voice like a soft wave. A comfortable silence stretched out. The wanderer felt at ease now, the initial awe settling into a warm familiarity. He sensed that the spirit was not rushing him. She was content to let him take in everything, to ask what he wished. After a moment, he mustered one of the few questions still tugging at his mind. The writer. The letters mentioned others who listened before. Even now, is someone else hearing the ocean's whisper from far away? Maybe not knowing exactly what it is, like I did at first. At this, the spirit's form shimmered a little, and she tilted what could be her head, as if listening to a distant sound. "Yes," she answered. "Even now, somewhere across the water, there is another who listens in the quiet hours, not as directly as you, only in dreams and gentle hunches. But the sea carries your story to them, piece by piece, as it unfolds. No gift we give is ever for one person alone. Its echoes travel and find those who need them." The wanderer's mind flicked to an image, whether imagined or given to him by the spirit, of a solitary figure on a dark porch by the sea, pen in hand, listening to the night. He felt a kinship for that unknown person, as if they sat in the next room rather than maybe hundreds of miles away. He smiled softly, the expression illuminated by the golden light. "I hope our story brings them comfort. I have a feeling it already has." "I believe so," said the spirit, a note of satisfaction in her voice. "The threads are all coming together at this dawn." The chamber seemed to brighten just a bit, as she spoke that last word, dawn. The wanderer realized that, indeed, the darkness of night was beginning to yield outside. A faint, cool tone of morning blue seeped in through the passage he had come from. It must be close to sunrise. Time had flowed strangely in the cave, but the world outside kept turning. The spirit's form, too, responded to this change. She glowed a touch less intensely now, the golden light softening, as if she were preparing to blend back into the watery pool. The wanderer felt a pinch of sadness at the thought that this miraculous encounter was nearing its end. "Must you go so soon?" he asked quietly. The spirit of the tides seemed to reach out and gently caress the air near his forehead, a gesture of comfort. "My time in this form is brief. The coming sun calls me back to where stories reside between the waves, but you will not be left wanting." She pointed, or rather inclined the upper part of her body, toward the conch shell he held. The shell's white glow remained steady. "Through that, you can find me in your heart whenever you truly need. And you have the letters, the memories of this night. Those are yours to carry forever." The wanderer closed his fingers around the shell, feeling its quiet power humming. It had guided him unerringly, and he believed it would continue to guide him symbolically, even if it never whispered again. "I understand," he said, though reluctantly. "Will we ever speak like this again, face to face?" The spirit gave a kindly chuckle that echoed like a distant gull's gentle call. "Who can say? The future flows like water and takes the shape of whatever vessel it fills. But know that I am never far. When you speak to the ocean aloud or in your thoughts, it is my ears that listen, and if you listen in return, you may hear my voice in the hush of the tide." That promise was enough. It was more than the wanderer had ever dreamed possible, that he could have a personal bond with the very spirit of the sea. He realized he felt completely at peace now, more than he had felt in years, perhaps ever. The weight in his chest he'd grown used to, the one made of loneliness and aimlessness, was simply gone. In its place was a gentle fullness, like his heart had been filled with calm waters and now floated light and free. With deep gratitude shining in his eyes, he bowed his head to her. "You've given me a gift beyond measure," he said. "How can I ever repay it?" "By living your life with the peace and love you found here," she replied immediately. With that straightforward wisdom the wanderer was beginning to recognize as characteristic of all the ocean's gifts. By sharing your story in time with those who need to hear it, you are part of the chain now, one link in the great circle. When you pass on what you've gained in kindness and understanding, you honor everything that was done for you tonight. He remembered Josiah saying something about that, how stories and comfort get passed around, never really belonging to one person alone. The wanderer smiled. "I will. I don't know how yet, but I will share it. Even if it's just comforting one lost soul by a fire someday with the tale of a whispering sea, I'll make sure it lives on." The spirit seemed content with this answer. The glow of her form began to dim, the distinct shape of a woman dissolving gradually back into amorphous light and water. The golden luminescence that suffused the cave started to gather back toward her as well, concentrating in the pool. "Go now, dear wanderer," her voice said, sounding more ethereal as her form gently collapsed into a graceful pillar of water and light once again. Dawn comes, and you have a beautiful day ahead. Your friend awaits you outside. Josiah, the wanderer murmured with a fond smile, realizing the keeper must be up and about with the sunrise. He suddenly looked forward to sharing a morning cup of tea with him, to telling him, well, perhaps not everything, but enough. Goodbye, and thank you, the wanderer said one last time, feeling a lump in his throat, but it was a sweet ache, not a painful one. The water column that was the spirit bent in a semblance of a nod. Farewell, brave soul, until we speak again in the wind and waves. And with that, the light flashed gently, not harsh or bright enough to startle, but enough to momentarily whiten the whole chamber. And then the spirit of the tides was gone. In her place, the water of the pool fell back with a soft splash that echoed like a closing sigh. For a short while, the golden glow lingered in the water and on the walls, gradually fading. The cave returned to its earlier bluish half-light. Only now, in the silence after that celestial presence, the wanderer noticed something new. There on the stone ledge beside his lantern lay a small object that hadn't been there before. He approached and picked it up. It was a stone, about the size of a skipping pebble, smooth and round. Its color was unusual, a milky white shot through with veins of gold that caught the light. As he held it, it felt slightly warm, and he sensed a very faint pulse from it, like a tiny heartbeat or the echo of a distant wave. A keepsake from the spirit, no doubt, perhaps formed from solidified water and light. He smiled and tucked it safely into his satchel next to the bundle of letters. He then picked up his lantern and turned back the way he had come, taking a last look at the inner sanctum. It looked different now, just a quiet cave chamber with a placid pool. Yet he knew what he had experienced would never leave this place, or him. The glow might have faded from the stone, but it would live in his heart forever. With careful steps, the wanderer retraced his path through the knee-deep channel, back into the letter room where the little chest rested. The letters were back inside the chest, the ribbon retied as he had left it. They almost seemed to emit a gentle light of their own now, as if happy to have a new story added among them. He closed the chest lid firmly and whispered a promise to those unknown friends. I will remember, and I will add my voice for the next who comes. Then he continued on, through the passage with the glowing fungi letters, which he now could clearly recognize as phrases of gratitude and courage in that strange script, as though now he understood their meaning without needing to read them in words. And finally, he reached the vine-draped entrance where pale morning light was spilling in. He pushed aside the vines and emerged onto the eastern shore once more. Dawn had indeed arrived. The sun was not yet above the horizon, but the sky over the sea was brightening to shades of lavender and pink. The morning star still twinkled above the thinning line of the silver mist that hung far out over the water. And there, standing just beyond the water's reach on the grey sand path, was Josiah. The old lighthouse keeper leaned lightly on a driftwood staff. He must have come around from the cottage shortly after the wanderer left, perhaps trusting that if fate brought the young man to his shore, it would also bring him safely out again. Josiah's face, lit by the soft dawn glow, crinkled into a broad, relieved smile when he saw the wanderer emerge. He lifted a thermos he was carrying in his other hand. Tea, he called out in a gentle tease. I thought you might like something warm after a night in a chilly cave. The wanderer laughed, a sound free and ringing in the morning stillness. How good it felt to laugh like that, with pure joy underlying it. He realized he had become a slightly different person in the hours since he last saw Josiah. More at peace, more sure, and he was eager to share that feeling, at least a little. He took the last steps across the wet sand and accepted the thermos gratefully. It was warm to the touch. "You think of everything, Josiah," he said sincerely. The keeper shrugged modestly, his eyes twinkling. "Oh, I reckon not everything. Just tea. The rest you had to find on your own." He paused, looking the wanderer up and down quickly, as if to ascertain his well-being. "You okay, son?" The wanderer nodded. "I'm wonderful," he said, and those simple words carried a world of truth. It was more beautiful than I ever imagined. Josiah's smile turned a bit misty. Perhaps he remembered his own experiences, or perhaps he was just happy to see the outcome. "That's usually the way of it," he replied softly. They stood there for a moment, companionably watching the horizon. The sun's edge was now peeking up, a sliver of molten gold emerging from the water far away. The mistbank that had shrouded the island at night was dissolving rapidly in the dawn light, unraveling into wisps and then into nothing. The sea was calm, and gulls were beginning to wheel and cry in the distance, heralding the morning. The wanderer took a sip from the thermos. The tea was sweet with honey and herbs, and it warmed him thoroughly. "Josiah," he said after a few quiet moments, "thank you for everything. You knew what was happening, didn't you?" Josiah chuckled, taking the thermos back for a swig himself. "I knew bits and pieces, enough to do my part. Folks like me, we're just caretakers. The sea does the real work. I just make sure the door is open and the kettle is on, so to speak." "Well, you did a lot more than that. I won't forget it." Josiah patted the wanderer's shoulder. "Nor will I forget you, lad. You've a life to get back to, though, I suspect." The wanderer looked out over the water toward the west. He could not see the mainland or wherever his next destination was, but he suddenly felt eager to return. Not out of homesickness. He had no fixed home, but out of hope. There were things he wanted to do, maybe people he wanted to see again with fresh eyes, and certainly stories he wanted to write or tell. "Yes," he said thoughtfully. "It's strange. I came here thinking maybe I'd finally found the place I'd want to stay forever. But now my heart wants to roam again, in a good way. I feel like it's time to go back and live, really live, not just wander to escape things." Josiah nodded in satisfaction. "That's the gift the sea gives. It sends you home to yourself, wherever you go." They began walking slowly back toward the western side of the island, skirting the edge of the palms. The morning light grew stronger by the minute, painting the sand in pale gold. As they walked, they chatted quietly about little things, the weather likely that day, the amusing look on the cat's face when she found the wanderer's cot empty, the best way to row out of the cove with the current. Nothing was said explicitly about the profound events in the cave. Both of them knew no words were really needed, and that perhaps it was too sacred to dissect with conversation so soon. When they reached the dock on the western shore, the wanderer's rowboat was still securely tied and bobbing gently on the high tide, for the ocean had already begun its cycle of return. The boat looked somehow newer in the daylight, every scratch on its wood telling a story of previous journeys and awaiting more. The two men faced each other by the boat. It was time. The wanderer extended his hand, and Josiah gripped it firmly with both of his, in the way old sailors do. There was respect and affection in that handshake beyond what either could articulate. "Take care of yourself out there," Josiah offered, clearing his throat gruffly. "And remember, you've got a friendly shore here whenever you need it. You or anyone you send this way." "I'll be back to visit," the wanderer promised. "Maybe not for a while, but someday. This island is part of me now." Josiah smiled, seeming pleased by that. "We'll keep a light on for you." With a final nod, the wanderer stepped into the boat. The sea was calm, the morning fair. It was a perfect day for travel. He checked that his satchel with the letters and stone was secured, and that the conch was safe in his pocket. Then he loosened the rope and handed the coil to Josiah, who kindly took it. The keeper put one foot on the boat's stern to steady it, and offered a last piece of advice born of years watching the currents. "Head southward first, around that buoy rock, then cut west. You'll avoid the tricky eddies that way." The wanderer took up the oars and nodded. "Got it." With a push from Josiah, the rowboat glided away from the dock. The wanderer dug the oars in and pulled smoothly, his muscles feeling strong and rested. As he gained a bit of distance, he looked back at the lighthouse. In the clear morning, the white tower stood out cheerfully against the blue sky, and for a moment the sun caught the glass at the top, flashing a bright beacon farewell. "Thank you," he called back to the shore, lifting one oar briefly in salute. Whether he meant the thanks for Josiah, the island, or the ocean itself, or all of them at once, even he couldn't separate. It was simply a thanks to the world. Josiah raised his hand and called, "Fair winds, son." The wanderer turned the craft as instructed, and soon the cove and dock slipped out of sight behind the rocky outcrop. He began making his way westward, each stroke taking him further on calm waters. The sun climbed higher, gilding the gentle waves, and there ahead stretched the open sea, sparkling and inviting. To his surprise, the lingering mist that he had travelled through during the night had not entirely vanished from the water. Instead, it had reorganized itself into a long, shimmering corridor of haze that trailed westward over the ocean, exactly in the direction he needed to go. It was thin enough not to obscure the morning sun, but visible enough to act as a luminous path on the water, like a road made of dawn. It reminded him of the moonlit path that had led him out, but now it was a sunrise path leading him home. He smiled, realizing this was no coincidence either, but one final gift from the spirit and the sea, a guiding light for his return journey. He followed it with confidence, rowing steadily. As the island grew small behind him and the distance to the mainland shrank ahead, the wanderer reflected on all that had transpired. He felt no urge to rush, no anxiety about what came next, only a serene readiness. When he closed his eyes for a moment, he could still see the spirit's reassuring form, hear her voice mingled with the soothing splash of his oars. He knew that whenever he saw the ocean, even in the smallest puddle or the largest expanse, he would feel a friend's presence. The golden mist road carried him until, by mid-morning, he sighted the outlines of a familiar coastline on the horizon, the world he had come from, now welcoming him back. The mist was nearly gone by then, evaporated into the day, but he didn't need it any longer. He had his bearings and a clear sky. Meanwhile, on a faraway porch, the writer awoke with a start just as the very last nocturnal wave washed ashore at his feet. He hadn't realized he'd fallen asleep in his rocking chair, pen still loosely in hand. A few scribbles of Chapter 3's ending scrawled in his notebook. The eastern sky was coloured with dawn, and the early chill was dissipating. He rubbed his eyes, feeling that curious confusion one has upon waking somewhere that is not quite bed. But as soon as he heard the hush of the receding wave, memory flooded back. The story had continued in his dreams or half-dreams through the night. He was sure of it. There had been a golden light, a conversation, a sense of sublime peace. It was all there in his mind, though he hadn't written it down yet. He sat up straighter, heart racing with realization and a touch of worry. What if he forgot it now that he'd accidentally dozed? But as he was about to frantically scribble notes, he noticed something lying on the wet sand right at the water's edge. It was a conch shell, large and beautiful, with whorls and ridges, and it glowed faintly with a pale blue light. The writer gasped and nearly dropped his notebook. Could it be? He rose, legs a bit stiff, and walked a few steps to retrieve it. The sea foam licked around the shell almost playfully, as if nudging it into his hands. He picked up the shell reverently. It felt warm, and the glow brightened just a touch as he held it. This was no ordinary seashell deposited by chance. It was a gift, a tangible link to the very story he had been hearing. He held it to his ear, hardly daring to breathe. From its spiral depths, a gentle whisper did issue, just for a moment, like a sigh. He heard a few indistinct words, but one stood out clear as a bell in his heart. Connected. Tears brimmed in the writer's eyes, and he pressed the shell to his chest, overcome with emotion. The fantastical tale that he had been privileged to eavesdrop on through the night was not just a fancy of sleep. It was real in some wondrous way, real enough that its echoes had washed up on his shore at precisely the right moment. He stood there for a long minute, the dawn breeze tousling his hair, the shell in his hands gleaming softly in the pink light. Finally, he looked out over the sea, toward where he imagined an island might lie beyond the reach of his sight, and further beyond to where a man in a rowboat might even now be smiling up at the morning sun. "Thank you," the writer whispered, his voice warm with gratitude. He wasn't sure whom he was thanking, perhaps the wanderer for sharing his journey through the mysterious connection, or the spirit of the tides for allowing him to listen, or the ocean itself for being the messenger. Likely all of them. The waves seemed to whisper back in their age-old language, a kindly shush that could have been, "You're welcome," if one had the wit to translate. With the conch shell tucked in the crook of his arm and his notebook in hand, the writer settled back into his chair. He didn't even notice how the wood no longer felt cold from the night air, or how the gulls had begun calling raucously, as they did every sunrise. His mind was already turning over the marvelous ending of the story, eager to write it down while it was fresh and vivid. He uncapped his pen and began to write, the words flowing easily. The wanderer stepped forward into the golden passage. He chuckled softly as he realized he was essentially transcribing the beautiful conversation and scenes he had somehow experienced through the whisper. It was the final chapter that tied everything together, and it poured out of him like water from a spring, clear, refreshing, true. As he wrote the final lines describing a new day's sun over calm seas, the writer felt a profound sense of closure and serenity settle over him. He placed the pen down at last and read over the ending. It was just as he'd hoped. Calm, comforting, and complete. Closing the notebook, he realized the sun had fully risen. The first true rays of sunlight were peeking above the horizon, casting a golden path across his little cove, much like the one the wanderer had followed out of the mist. The new day was here. The writer stood up once more, stretching his back and inhaling the salt-tinged breeze deeply. He felt rested and inspired, despite having spent the night outdoors. More importantly, he felt connected to the wanderer, to the old keeper, and the spirit of the tides, to all those others who had heard these whispers in ages past, and to those who might yet hear retellings of this tale in the future. He looked at the conch shell in his hand, now just faintly glowing in the daylight. He decided he would keep it on his writing desk as a constant reminder of this night and what it meant. Perhaps, on some quiet nights, he might even hear more whispers through it, or at least remember the ones he already knew by heart. Until next time, he murmured to the sea with a contented smile, echoing the spirit's parting sentiment. He gave a little bow of his head, feeling a bit foolish and a bit wonderful at the same time, as one does after a miracle. Then he added, in a tone of fond farewell, "Sleep well, old ocean, until we speak again." With that, the writer turned and went inside, the screen door creaking softly and shutting with a gentle bang. The porch was left empty, save for the rocking chair swaying just a touch in the breeze and a few sandpiper bird tracks drawn where the final wave had receded. Out on the water, the waves continued their eternal dance, sparkling under the morning sun. They had many tales to tell and many ears to reach, but for now, they were content simply to be the background music to a peaceful dawn. And as the new day unfurled, the enchantment of the night lingered in every heart it touched. The wanderer rowing steadily with hope toward the horizon, the lighthouse keeper brewing a fresh pot of tea and humming an old sea shanty to his cat, the writer penning the last few lines with a grateful heart, and perhaps even within the soul of an unknown listener curling up at bedtime, smiling at a story about a whispering sea that made the world feel a little more kind. All under the gentle watch of the returning tide, which, true to promise, carried love and memory in each swell and retreat, revealing to those willing to listen that in the grand story of life we are indeed all connected, like voices joining a timeless, soothing lullaby.